All right, guys, it's Coach Q. Welcome back to another episode of The Ride. I appreciate those of you that have been tuning in for this season's now 6th episode. I've gotten some awesome comments talking about the quality of the guests and the conversation. So if you have been tuning in and supporting the show, very much thank you. Don't forget to, like and subscribe and do all that stuff. But I did have a conversation here, an awesome conversation with Coach Chris Burke. He is the now current defensive coordinator at Hampton. Before he held that role, he was at Wabash College holding a head coach role for 4 years. Before that, Maryville University, he was the assistant coach. He also served as the volunteer assistant at St. Leo, where he played on that defense. Now, today's conversation revolves primarily around a few topics. The first being, how does Hampton get in the Division I win column for the first time in its history? Obviously, Coach Burke is heading up the defensive side of the ball, so a lot of the conversation revolved around how he's looking to meld this unit to be able to accomplish that goal. Intensity and violence were brought up, which I was very interested in talking to him about. How do you go about adding that into your culture? How do you go about, doing drills that emphasize that stuff so that it kind of shines out there when it matters most? So talked about that, talked about perimeter defense from a defensive midfielder side. Also, Coach Burke has a plethora of knowledge on the culture building side. He brings that from his experience in the military, as well as his former stops, being a head coach at Wabash, and we talked a little bit about the success they had there. So it was a great conversation. As always, hopefully you find some value in it. Enjoy the ride. All right, Coach Burke, welcome to the show. Glad you could stop by here. We're right in the same vicinity now. We're going to be touching on that move right at the beginning of the episode, but happy to have you, man. Glad you could be part of the show. I'm a big fan of the Burke family. Your dad is the one that really taught me the game for the first time in the right way. Your younger brother, obviously, me and him are really good friends, and really excited to have you.
Yeah, I feel like I should stop by the office, maybe sat on the couch or something, but I really appreciate it, man. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be where I'm at without those two either. Discussions at the dinner table often drive my mom nuts because it's always just about lacrosse or something going on. But I know they would really appreciate hearing that as well. So,
of course, I talk about you more than you think I probably do, because I always tell people, like, when I was at JV, there was this guy that would just come to practice and whack the absolute shit out of me with that long, that long stick. Yeah, man, I remember you coming to those practices. So really a full circle moment here, man. Those were fun days, though. I think you were still in the Marines then, actually.
I had just gotten. Oh no, that was right when I joined. That was way before I joined. So I had signed the famous dotted line, and I was getting ready to leave. And so I was like, well, might as well help coach until I leave. So I think I was actually getting ready to head out, and that was the last season. So I have that photo, the last team photo we had. I think we were at Maury, maybe. I can't remember.
Okay.
With Coach McCaskill. I have that photo still in my house, and you guys all signed it. And so it's actually sitting in my office at my house.
I love that, man. Damn, I don't want to tear up the episode here. Yeah, send it to me. Send it to me, man. Hey, it's speaking of your service, and thank you for your service, by the way, as we get started here. It's Veterans Month. We were talking about that prior to the episode starting as well. So would love for you to kind of give a quick shout out. I've loved, from a lacrosse standpoint, I've loved what they've done with the Special Forces game that they do every year now. It's a really cool way to highlight the guys. A lot of them being, from Virginia Beach or around this area. Do you want to give a quick shout out to anybody?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, man, I wouldn't be where I'm at without the Marine Corps. I didn't really have my life together all that well before. And it really gave me purpose. And it's really my drive to continue doing what I do. Every game I wear, stuff that I have from Afghanistan on my hat. And I do that because, I want veterans to know that they have more skills than they think they do. And there's a lot of people that can probably learn from their experience. And so it really is my driving force to continue my career. I really want people to learn from my military experience, and hopefully, close that gap a little bit in that divide from the civilian life to the military life, and have people understand what those guys go through. So as long as I'm doing this thing, and as long as I I continue to live. I will always live with the Marine Corps at the front. They really changed my life, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without it. So
Almost all the content that I've seen on you when I'm looking back at the Wabash days and things like that, the military comes up, your background comes up, and you do a great job of kind of highlighting that history and those guys that are getting after it, making sure that when they come home, I mean, you're a shining example of that, just being able to come back and feel like you're accomplishing a lot in your life and with your family. So
yeah, I somehow made it back to the Virginia Beach area. And what I'll tell you, man, is like growing up, my mom was in the FBI for 30 plus years. My father was in the Navy. My mother was also in the Navy. And we come from a military family, and this area is just, I mean, everybody has been influenced some ways, somehow by the military. And I was given an opportunity in the Marine Corps, and I did the best I could with it. And I've tried to live my life that way now. If I'm going to get an opportunity, I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to see where we stand. I think I've built a career like that as well. But the main focus, I've been very upfront with our guys. There's been some tear-jerking stories in locker rooms that I've been a part of. And to be honest with you, if we ever, when we talk about recruiting, I recruit a lot of guys with a military mindset. I'm just drawn to those individuals and those families. And so, I think it's just a part of me. And here I am getting to teach people about that experience on a daily basis and help mentor people and hopefully, grow good young men and push them in the right direction. And it's, 20 years ago, I don't think you could have said that Chris Burke would have been doing that. So I'm super thankful, man. And, somebody always asks me, hey, we thank you for your service. And to be honest with you, I got so much out of it, just a ton out of it. And I not only got to serve my country, but man, you do it for the people. You go in being a big patriotic person, and then you realize that the people next to you are the things that you really treasure those moments. And that's why I'm in a locker room now for the rest of my life, hopefully, So
I do want to talk about those nuances of the kind of similarities where you talk about the locker room as opposed to the group that you served with and all of these things. But to those of you that are listening and that have served or are serving, I appreciate that very much, and thank you for your service. But Coach, another thing that I wanted to bring in here early in the episode, and basically we're going to go opposite of chronological. We're going to start with Hampton. Hampton is a big story in the world of lacrosse, and you just got named the defensive coordinator there here this past summer. So again, congratulations for that job. I actually held that post. I don't know if you know this. I held that post for 2 years when it first started. Yep. So this is a good meeting here. And I'm just interested, man. How have the last, I would say, 3 odd months gone for you? It might be more, it might be less, but how has that time gone with your time of getting associated with Hampton?
Yeah, it's been great, man. I'm surrounded by really driven individuals. That's really good for my growth, and allowing me to learn. We have a young head coach, Vince Culpepper, who brought me in from his days at Wabash. So he got to see what I think Wabash did over my 4 years, and brought me in because of that experience of rebuilding that program. What I will say is, he was running this thing for 3 months on his own, and so right now we are cleaning a lot of things up. We're moving at full speed. And we got some good kids in the room, man. And they're really taking to the learning that we are throwing at them. Because we're not just teaching lacrosse, we're teaching them life lessons, and we're holding them accountable to things a lot tighter than what seems like in the past. And so there's a lot of learning going on. And, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a culture and a foundation for this program so it lasts longer than we do. Ultimately, it's how you leave the jersey, right? And we're really trying to leave this better than we found it. And I think we've already started to pass that. We really have every day we walk away and we make it kind of a thing where we walk out and we go, today was a good day. We got better today. And we have this conversation every single day where it's like, hey, we got better today. I would say there was maybe 2 days where we were like, hey, we didn't take a step back, but we didn't get better, Mm-hmm. And so being a part of that is awesome. Like, if you're stopping, like if you're not being challenged anymore, you're not living, right? And so we have a staff with Coach Matthews and Coach Culpepper and now Coach Carter Collins as well, that are very driven to see this thing succeed. And it's just being eaten up by the guys. The guys just love it. Everything that the guys have come to us has been pretty positive. It's like, hey, coach, like, for instance, we had a practice the other day and they're like, can we do this before practice? And I was like, I've been waiting for you to ask that, because as a grown man, you have to just do things and you have to learn from experience. And they just started doing things on their own. And that's when you know that you have a good culture, is when guys are striving to do better, and doing it on their own. They're not asking questions. They're just going to go play wall ball. They're just going to have, they're just going to go through the defense on their own. They're going to watch the film on their own, because ultimately they need to do those things if we're going to do anything, here in the near future. So we got a lot of good dudes in the room and they're eating it up. Oftentimes we have to take a step back, realizing that this is very new to them. From a leadership standpoint, from accountability standpoint, just from a cultural standpoint. A lot of these guys haven't gotten the things that we've thrown at them, and that's not even just the lacrosse, which is a whole nother piece to it, right? And so we're adding that piece to it, but we've really focused on building a great foundation here. With the time that we have, we're going to give everything we got to building a good foundation, and we're going to see massive strides happen eventually. We don't know how, we don't know when, but this thing will move forward because of the foundation we're putting in now.
I love that you can get lost in the day-to-day of building a program and being with the boys, making sure you guys get better every single day, and that being a mantra, because the elephant in the room and the spotlight that has been on Hampton for a long time is, when are they going to win that first game? When are they going to kind of cross the chasm, turn the corner, however you want to call it? I know that had to be part of the decision-making process with you to leave Wabash after, building up a program into a winner, to say, hey, I got to go right back and strap my bootstraps on and pick this thing up. What was the decision to say, hey, I'm going to join Hampton and try to make this happening? And past that, I do want to get into how you see Hampton making the next move. Was it a culture thing that you think that there was missing maybe, or was it on the field, the X's and O's, the talent? I know that's a large discussion. That's kind of what I want to have.
Yeah, I didn't make that decision very easily. If you know me, I'm very attached to my teams. I think a team is a direct representation of its leadership. I learned that in the Marine Corps, and I hope that I've left every program better than I found it. Before Wabash, there was Maryville, and they hadn't won an NCAA game. When I walked in there as an assistant coach, and I was given the opportunity by Mitch Schaefer, who was the youngest head coach in probably NCAA history. I think he was 23 when he took over, and he decided to hire an old, crusty veteran from St. Leo University. But before Wabash, I had to learn on the fly. And I was blessed to work alongside Mitch Schaefer and Scott Stark, who treated me like a co-head coach, and allowed me to fail at full speed. And I learned a lot through that process. I was like, okay, this didn't work. We can't do that. We can do this though, and this worked. So let's keep that going. And I got to work a lot through that. I think Wabash was a pretty big beneficiary of that. Of kind of, I guess you can call it that research and that experience. When I got to Wabash, I mean, we're talking about 28 guys on the roster. 8 of them walked out the door when I took the job. And so if I could tell, I was not happy-go-lucky that first year. I was a little worried, if I'm being honest. There's nothing like your own players saying, guys that you thought would be there for you, saying that they don't believe in your dream, and making Wabash better as a head coach. And so the guys that stayed, man, I was so blessed to have those guys. They worked so hard. Everything we did, even though I think we tied the win record or something my first year, but even though we did that, it was never about winning. As much as I wanted it to be about winning, and we were losing games against teams that I competed at a different level as a coach, as a player, and we're still losing those games, I knew that if I just got through it, the next year would be better. And as long as I continue to put forth the effort, that I continue, like, just keep taking steps forward, and give everything you got every single day, we would get better. And that eventually happened, because we started getting guys that really believed in the system. My second year, we actually only had 19 guys. We had less guys my second year than we did my first year. And so that second team ended up winning 7 games, which they hadn't won more than 4 or 5.
So you had 19 guys on the roster, can't even run a full field basically with that, and you're winning NCAA games, is what you're telling me?
Correct. And I mean, what we did was we stuck to our guns. We said, this is our standard, this is our expectation, and we are going to hold you accountable to that. And nothing wavered from that. There were some tough discussions, and this was Division III, so guys aren't really, they're not getting paid to play. There's no scholarship aid for them to be there, so it was easy for them to walk. Those 19 guys are the foundation of that program. For wherever Wabash goes from now on, those 19 guys are the foundation of that program, and everything we built was based off of that group. And every year our schedule got harder. So we ended up breaking the wins record the second year and tying it the third year, but our schedule got a lot harder. We got more guys, but it's more about the right dudes. You got to get the right dudes that believe in this program, and that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. As a head coach, is like, I can't will them to win. They got to play the game. I'm going to give a shout out to my college coach, Coach Jorgensen. He used to say this ad nauseum, but he goes, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's, which I'm sure everybody's heard that saying, but it's absolutely true. I could draw up something crazy, but if we don't have the guys that believe in it and the guys that want to go out and play for you, then it doesn't matter. And so, I think right now at Hampton, we are in a situation where we have really good dudes that are bought into what we're doing, and we got to teach them the X's and O's at a little bit more advanced level. But they're figuring it out at a very, very high speed, which I love. So.
Yeah, I want to dive into more on Hampton. I do want to give some time to Wabash maybe a little bit later in the episode. You had a great run there, as you just talked about, but what are some of the day-to-day things that you're seeing in the fall that are making you think, hey, we are getting better? What are these pieces that need to be stacked in to get this going in the right direction?
Yeah, right before I get into that, I'd like to say, thank you to the guys at Wabash. They worked very hard for me. I'm not a guy that's always going to pat guys on the back, but they definitely deserve a shout out. They did a fantastic job working their butts off every single day, and I'm not always an easy coach to play for, and I know that because I have a lot of purpose in what I do. I'm very driven, and I want that for my guys. I hope that when I coach a guy, they leave a better human being and a better man. And sometimes it takes years to figure out. Sometimes it's right away, and I hope that I left them better off, and because they really, I wouldn't be where I'm at without those kids and those families that really believed in our system there and helped me build that. So I want to give a shout out to the Wabash guys for sure. And before we get into
sure.
So X's and O's, like practice wise, we're really on point. We're really organized. We're very much a pen and paper group, and when it comes to practice planning, we stay on target on everything. We have we're really rep based right now, because we're trying to figure out what we have, right? There's a lot of evaluation going on day in, day out here. We're doing a ton of small sided stuff. The sixes, like I'm sure you saw in the scrimmage, like the sixes, we jumped into that a little, probably too early. And this is part of, being, going to a program and trying to, revamp it. And, we were basically short staffed the whole summer, right? There's some things that we change on the fly. There's some things that we go after, and sometimes we're maybe we should back up a little bit and reteach this piece. And so what we've actually done is kind of come back and started teaching the small-sided stuff, really focused on the culture aspect, We evaluated pretty much the first half of the fall, and now it's kind of like, okay, this is who we are. The guys, this attracted the guys. This hurt us a little bit. Let's take that away. Let's add this piece. And so every day, there's a lot of similarities throughout practice. We go in with focus, and so we go in with, today's a transition day. Today's, and we'll touch on like 1v1s and things like that. But like for the most part, we go in and we're rocking. We have a 2-hour practice. If we're having a 2-hour practice, we're trying to get 14 to 15 drills in there. Between this coaching staff, we have a ton of drills. We have a massive drill bank. And if you know anything about me, I'm very small-sided, and so like even at Maryville, we didn't have a ton of guys. And so we had to get really good at the small-sided drills and stuff. And so I have this massive drill bank of these drills that we can get better at, and just different ways to do things. And then obviously you see stuff all over the place,
Can I ask a quick lightning question with Maryville and Wabash, where you're talking about having a smaller roster?
Yeah.
And you almost have to be small-sided out of necessity, as you just said there. But how do you work in the larger portions of the game to a group that small? Just a lightning question. I want to stay with Hampton, but I think it's very key. Like you had to almost create probably full field scenarios with not enough players. So I'm just interested in how you did it.
I mean, it's kind of developed into my philosophy, which is like if you get good at 2v1s, that's the basics of lacrosse. Is you're trying to find the 2v1. You're trying to find the 3v2, right? And so, on the offensive side, it's really that basic, right? So for us, when I had all these, I mean, pretty much every program I've been at had smaller numbers. This was actually the biggest roster I've had as a coach, probably until I want to say my last year with Coach Stark at Maryville. But I really try to harp on small-sided stuff, the transition aspect of the game. If we want to play fast, we really focus on how we do those drills. Like you're not gonna just do West Jenny at 75%, right? Like, so we're up and down. And again, like I'm sure you saw in our scrimmage, we're fast, we're athletic, and we go. And so we try to develop a philosophy of what we want the team to be, and then we base all our drills around that. And so we do a lot of transition. Like, to be honest with you, last practice, we had a couple even situations, but most of it was small-sided, because that's the basics of the game, right?
Got it.
So if our guys can understand a 3v2 situation, then now they're hunting for that. And they've already seen it. They just haven't seen it with 6 guys on the field. And so really trying to get the guys to understand, if we want to be good at pairs, we got to do a lot of 2v2 drills. And how we teach those drills and put them in different situations throughout the practice, whether those 2v2s are on the side, they're, north, south, east, west, we change it up on them. And so they've been in that situation in a smaller arena, if you will, and then they grow it out in their own mind. Then they see it and they're like, oh, wow, like when we play 6s, they slid adjacent, we got the ball through X, and now the 3v2, they didn't slide from the adjacent wing. They came from the crease, which opened up, the skip pass back up to the top on the second level of the play. And so, like, they start figuring it out pretty quickly. And you're developing a player, right? You're allowing them to create, and our game has evolved from less, hey, be a robot. This is, hey, we're running this offense, and you have to do this every single time, and more, hey, like, this might happen, and this might happen. And if this happens, this is your option. And allowing them to read and react, defensively and offensively. And I think when you really break down the game that simply, you really develop IQ. And so that's what we're really focused on in the fall.
I want to go on the defensive side of the ball primarily. Obviously, you're charged with heading up that unit. When you talk about taking over Hampton, I'm sure you've looked at some of their previous games, maybe last year, to look at the talent that you've had in that environment. When you look at that evaluation, where do you start? Where are you headed with this defense? Let's talk about just how you see the roster as it is now and into the future, and then we can kind of delve into maybe your different core principles on defense.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I kind of watched the film is they were taking dodges at 12 yards, and so like if you rewatch the film, they just kind of sloughed in and let Towson kind of run all over them. A guy, it could be their last midfielder can shoot the ball from 15, right? Like we're playing in the CAA, right? So like we have to get out, we have to get beat early, we have to get on hands. That was a major piece. There didn't look like there was any communication going on, and so we had to revamp our communication systems. Clearing the ball was another aspect. The basics of lacrosse is like if you can't catch and throw, it's really hard to get on the field in Division One. And and so you could be the best defenseman in the world, but I hope you can make 6 stops because you can't get the ball off the field. And so if our game is going to be a lot of transition, like we are going to focus on transition this year, if that's going to be the case, then we have to have good sticks. And so we focus a lot on different aspects of being a defender that can move the ball up the field, but also even as our I think one of the most valuable positions on the field is short stick D midi. Those guys have to be able to transition the field. If you get beat, that's fine. For me, like that's fine. We'll slide to you, but can you transition the field? Can you get the ball to the guys that put the ball in the back of the net? And can you possibly put the ball in the back of the net, right? And so like I really like defensive middies that can really push the ball up the field and make the right play, understand offense. And so for us, when I watched the film, it was a lot of sitting back and allowing things to happen. And we talk about dictating. We need to take something away, and if they beat us because we've taken this away and they're killing us on this, then they would deserve that win, but they're going to fight for that win. And so we're trying to develop that style of philosophy with our defense, is where, hey, we're going to dictate, we're going to be violent, we're going to be fast, and we're going to make full speed mistakes. And if you make a mistake at full speed, we can at least go back and go, hey, like this was the wrong decision. But you're also going so fast that you might create some chaos. Somebody might not realize that you were going to do that. It might be a terrible mistake, but you rotated from the wrong spot, but you still got on hands, turned over the ball, and were able to push transition. And so we're trying to break this mentality of kind of sitting back and allowing things to happen to us and go out and get beat.
Yeah, we talked about violence and intensity before the episode. I want to hone in on that here in just a second. But another thing that you had just touched on there was dictate, right? Disrupt, dictate. Yeah. Specifically, kind of dive into that. Are you talking about maybe the physical one-on-one matchup where you're saying, hey, we're going to dictate where this offensive player is going to go by how we're kind of aligning? Are you doing that strategically throughout the game as far as, hey, we're going to dictate the flow of the ball so this guy isn't maybe going to touch the ball? So how do you look at dictating and then teaching that to your guys?
I think it's obviously in season scouting is super important, right? The teams we play have 6 guys on the field that can all put the ball in the back of the net, right? So winning your one-on-one matchup is critical, but also maybe coming up with a scheme that's like, hey, we're going to give them the throwback and, we're going to slide from the crease this time. And next quarter, we're going to go from, we're going to back rotate into the ball and give people different looks because we're playing against the best players in the country, in the world. On top of the fact that we're, coaching against the best coaches, in the world. And so for us, we need to be able to be adaptable and really, it's not just dictating on ball, but it's also dictating what a team wants to do, right? If we can take away one thing, let's take away one thing. And if they beat us, then they're going to earn that win. And if we can do that every game and we can be consistent with that, we're going to be in pretty decent shape. We're definitely going to close some gaps, which is what we want to do. But I think it's dictating on all sides of the field, like just, whether it's on ball or off ball or just team scheme altogether, you just got to dictate. And if we can do that, then, we'll disrupt as well. But yeah, Yeah, I think there's multiple aspects of dictating. Like you can dictate on ball, but then you just win the on ball matchup. If you're not doing anything off ball, then you're going to be in trouble. And when you play at this level, like I said, there's six guys that you would have to dictate against, and it's like, okay, well, what if we just keep the ball in that half of the field? Let's figure out a way. 90% of their goals come from the right side of the field. Let's try and keep the ball on the left side of the field, and at least make them work to get the ball to the right side of the field. So
I love looking at programs over a long period of time. I'm certain that you're thinking about the same things. How does your defense look in 3 years as opposed to right now? Are you going into it at all this season being your first, being like, hey, I need to play a certain way, and then I want to get to a place where maybe 3 years or 2 years down the line, when I've been there for 3 years and been able to recruit different guys, that we're going to play a different play style? How do you think about that coming in as a first year defensive coordinator as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 years down the line?
I'm going to kind of backpedal to my year at Maryville. We were kind of shooting from the hip, right? So like when I was at Maryville, we kind of recruited guys that were good ball players, and we figured it out, right? At Wabash, we stuck to our guns. We wanted to be a heavy pairs offense, and so that's what we did. And then we started recruiting pairs guys that we thought were going to be good in the pairs. Similar to here, we're in a situation where we want to play fast. We want to be able to push and transition. We might be slide heavy. We want to be rotate heavy. We want to be on hands. We want to be athletic and speedy, not sit back and wait, right? And so we're developing that mentality right now. A lot of the drills we do have very high intensity. And that's one thing that we can't fail at in any drill is like defensively, we have to be intense and we have to be violent. I don't care if it's a penalty, we have to be violent. And so our guys have really changed their philosophy from in the past. We saw it in the fall in the first couple practices, guys kind of sat back on their heels and like let the offense come to them. And I'm like, guys, you're taking dodges at 15 yards. Like 12 yards hands free is going in the back of the net unless we're making a save, right? And so we really started to develop this mentality where we're getting out on hands, we're getting beat early, we're communicating through two-man game a lot better, and we're communicating where the 1-2 and the split are really well. And so for us, those have been our major focus, I guess, is really trying to create a better environment for team defense, but also just changing how we play the game. Let's go get beat it out there so we can slide early, so we can stay on it, we can communicate through it, we can take away, our guys are doing a really good job right now of like taking away the pop, and so now the offense has to read and react a little bit better in practice, so they're even challenging the offense in that situation, and then the offense comes in the next practice and now has figured that piece out, and that's how you get better is you really work on those things. But now our guys started rotating really quickly to the pop, leaving the backside open, and now the guy is, instead of hitting the pop, he's hitting the skip, right? Or he's moving the ball forward and they're moving it back through.
I want to take it back to you talking about on-ball defense and playing out there, right? When you talk about playing one-on-one at the perimeter, where are you having these guys pick up the offensive dodger? Is it dependent on each player? Like each guy has his distinctive techniques, or do you have a certain area where you're saying, hey, 5 yards outside of the box, we need to be on hands here, or 10 or what have you?
Yeah, I think it's up to the defender, really. There's going to be some guys that can run with and stay with guys. I was never one of those defenders at St. Leo. My guys would tell you I was more of a hack. I was good near the cage, right? Like I was a good third defender, communicator, off ball, on ball at 30 years old, probably not my bag. And so I tried to stay closer to the cage. We have some bigger defenders where we definitely have some youthful defenders too. And we have some speedy guys. And so we don't need to be going and attacking hands at X until he can see the second level of the play. Maybe stay a little bit closer to the cage, take a really good angle. So we work with angles with the bigger guys. And the speedy guys, we kind of let them go eat, right? And those guys are usually the guys to rotate quickly. And they're trying to develop their own feel for the game now within a system that is put in place. And I think it's really cool kind of seeing guys kind of flourish and figure out themselves in that system. And because I'm very much a coach that's going to take a back seat. I'll coach you on the sideline. We're going to get our reps. We're going to keep this thing moving. But I allow our guys to fail and then come to me and then have questions. And so I'm really challenging them to learn, because ultimately you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? And so I'm trying to get them to understand that it's really, they have the power, and I'm going to be here for them when they do get here, when they do have those questions.
When you talk about that perimeter defense and having that defensive midfielder go out, I'm really interested in kind of that first point of contact, right? I call it the engage. When you first actually get contact, you're talking about violence, you're talking about intensity. Those are obviously good things to have when you go and chunk a guy. But how do you do that and balance that without lunging or missing a guy and all of that stuff that go into that first engage with the defensive midfielder?
I mean, if your feet are moving, it's going to be really hard to lunge, right? We've been really focusing this past probably 3 weeks, a lot on like the kick step and approaches and, drop steps and things like that, Ricos and things like that. So we've actually been working a lot on the 1v1s in general, and what I will tell you is we have been focused on getting 2 chunks in every dodge, whether that's at the beginning or the middle or the end. That's going to be up to the guy, up to the person playing defense. And so we really try to get 2 chunks. And some guys started chunking way early. Like you don't really, if a guy's 30 yards from the cage, like running with in that situation is probably the right situation, right? Unless you are really trying to keep them away from a certain area of the field and they have that advantage. I always say, don't dictate your hips until they dictate theirs. And the reason being is you keep kick stepping until they dictate, which direction they're going to go. And then you can run with, you can get a piece. It's going to be hard for them to switch their hips and get the ball the other way, right? And so we talk about 2 chunks. If it's a bigger guy that takes a little bit of, a couple. I mean, at this level, it's going to be, everybody's going to be able to get their top speed pretty quickly. In Division III, it was a lot different, right? Like you knew what Dodgers were going to give. That most guys had one hand. Most guys one trick pony, right? It was very easy to read offenses, I would say, but mostly because of tendencies of players. Whereas a lot of the players we're going to play against are going to be a lot more dynamic. So my job is going to be pretty tough in that sense. But understanding what we're trying to do as a team. If we want to get beat down the alley against a certain player, then we get beat down the alley with a certain player. If we want to force a guy to the middle because maybe he's taking a righty sweep and he's a lefty and his right hand, he's shooting, less than, 5% as his right hand. Okay, well, if that guy can beat us shooting higher than 5%, then he deserves that win, right? And I think have a nice patient approach to it is going to be critical for us. And so really trying to understand what your team's trying to do, I think is super important. There's going to be some things that you're going to try and take away and dictate, right? For us, for defensive minis, we really focused in my first 2 or 3 weeks, we really focused on breaking this mentality of sitting back and waiting. And so we made our guys go out and get a chunk, like it pretty far out there and get beat really far out there. And so now our guys are kind of meet in the middle. They're not we don't have to over-exaggerate that anymore. And guys are now starting to understand. And we're doing a lot of different 1v1 drills, and they're getting a lot of different looks and putting them in really tough situations. Like you're going to guard a redodge differently than you're going to guard an alley dodge, right?
With the distance from cage, right? I'm just talking through this with you. When you play that far out, it feels like you can get beat a little bit more topside when you're playing 30 yards away from the cage as opposed to 15.
Yeah.
Like if you sit back and you're trying to play this like fundamental defense and take away whatever, and they get topside, that feels like that's something that you don't want to have as part of your scheme. But is that something you're thinking about when you're saying, hey, 30 yards away from the cage, fellas, if we're playing out there, I don't want to get beat topside, but it helps us play a little bit. We're not totally dead.
Right. I think there's a safe way to play it, and there's a risky way to play it, right? Like if we can give them top side at 10 yards above the box and they sweep, we're probably not necessarily going to have to slide to that unless he gets his hips towards the cage, right? And so they're probably going to throw that ball forward. So it allows your team to really read the offensive players a lot better and make better decisions, rather than if you took that dodge, we call it, at the top of the box, you take that dodge and now the sliding space is a lot shorter. You have to make a quicker decision. And so for us, what we're seeing right now is our guys react really well to, hey, if we're going to take the sweep, just force them down the other alley. Sometimes we'll back rotate, sometimes we'll go from the crease, sometimes, but it allows us to kind of talk through that because we have a little bit more time. And so for our guys that are new to processing this information as quickly as we're trying to require, it's really helpful for their development.
In this kind of transition to maybe going and playing a little bit farther outside of the box, I'm interested in like how much patience is a part of it, or how much not freaking out if you do kind of because it's more space. There's going to be more space for the offense out there.
Right.
Do you see your players kind of freak out when they get beat up there and you say, hey, look, we're still very far away from the cage. You can use a different angle, or you can play this a certain way?
Yeah, some do. Some guys kind of freak out. Like, I just got beat topside, and it's like, but you forced him down the other alley, and he didn't have a shot. His hips were going towards the sideline. You did a good job there, right? And trying to convince guys of that there's some teams that funnel guys to the middle. I would have to look at like statistics and stuff, but there was somebody that at this last tournament, a coach I was sitting with, and he made a good argument of like those are actually easier shots to see for the goalies. It was a pretty interesting argument. That's the beauty of this game, is that there's so many ways to play it. I've seen people get funneled to the middle, slide from the crease, and I've seen guys only force down the alley, right? And where you take those dodges is certainly another aspect to it. Like, you could go adjacent from the low wings, so if you force a guy low wing, you take away the sweep, you could just go right off the base and do a 3-man rotation. Guy from the crease goes down to the guy at X, or you could just go full rotate. There's just so many different things you can do. As long as you're all on the same page, you can do a lot of different things. And I think, like, if we're taking a dodge from X, I've done everything from slide from the crease to coma to from the wing. I forced under, I've rolled away, rolled them under. We've forced up and away. There's just so many different aspects to it. And then whenever you talk to a different defensive guy, they do it differently. So I always try to pick people's brains and have those conversations.
How do you
I would have never thought of that. I would have never said, oh, yeah, my goalie wants to see those shots. Well, from 15 straight on the cage, you're seeing more cage, but the goalie might actually enjoy seeing the ball straight up at that distance. Yeah. So there's a good argument there.
Yeah, there's got to be some like math equation where it's like, well, you measure angle with distance as opposed to, all that stuff.
I'll leave that for
score for those shots.
Yeah, I'll leave that for the UVAs of the world. They can figure it out and let me know.
I do want to talk a little bit about maybe the finishing portion of the dodge. Let's say we have a really good approach. Let's say our footwork's great, our engage is great. I use the term engage. I'm not saying that you use that, but just those two chunks. You're doing a great job. How do you finish and kind of mix in this violence and intensity you're talking about without maybe overcommitting and getting yourself in a bad spot? How are you teaching that finish as the guy's getting ready to maybe pass or shoot?
Okay. Always, like, if the guy bounces out, you always finish with a check. It's just like as a close guy, entry exit, right? I think making sure that you're doing that and you're pushing them away I think it is super important. So if you're talking about like contact, we still are maintaining contact in this situation, correct? We're pushing up and we're pushing them out, and then our next step should be to the inside, our hips opening to where the ball went. And so that therefore our job is pretty much done, but we're still top side on our guy. So if he gets the ball back, we can still approach again for a redodge. But our next step is seeing the ball, putting our stick in the lane, and hopefully the ball's flowing to the other side, and we can go ahead and we're already steps ahead of where we should be. What you don't want to do is push the guy down the side and then continue to push him down the side and pull yourself out of position, because now you're allowing one player to have to cover two when he doesn't really have to do that. And you're pulling from your splitter or your two. I call it a splitter, but your three. You can you want to immediately go from on ball individual defense to team defense as quickly as possible.
What do you think about guys playing with one hand on their stick on ball? Like both shorty and pole. I'm interested in how you think about this, because I see some shorties, man, I got one guy that's going to be a junior this year. He's played all 3 of his years, and he's starting to do that thing where as they get more experience, they're trying to like be fancy. And I'm cool with that, maybe disrupt, but I'm interested in how you think about it.
I always, we talk about disruption, right? You mentioned it earlier. When you're on ball, your job is disruption. You should be trying to disrupt, obviously maintain the ability to contain your matchup. But we talk a lot about disruption. And so your job isn't to knock down balls anymore. That's not your job. That's the guy to your right, left, behind you. That's their job. And so we really try to focus on the on-ball aspect in a sense of like, hey, what's your job? My job's disrupt. Okay, then put 2 hands on your stick and disrupt the ball. Like, you had a good approach and then you screwed it all up. You could have just driven the hip there rather than try to knock down a pass that you have no intention of knocking down. Now, where's that threshold, right? Like, so where in that approach does that stick come out? I'm a big proponent to always skewering. So you always have the stick out in front. If you are a defensive midi, you can have it out in front at probably about 3/4, but you want to have it out in front. And so you're ready to jam, you're ready to go ahead and drive, you're ready for a crowbar, things like that as well. It's just really hard to do anything with one hand on your stick. I have in the past as a player, I would put one hand on my stick if I was off ball because it allowed me to communicate a little bit. But even then, as a coach, like I'm like, put 2 hands on your stick. You can communicate using your mouth, right? Like use verbal commands. And so we really focus on trying to get that as well, But I when I was recovering, a lot of times I'd put one hand on my stick, so because I found it quicker, and then I replaced that bottom hand. But eventually, I got 2 hands on my stick, and so we try to teach that.
Okay.
We deter them from the one-handed stuff.
Oh, you know what? As long as they don't slow down, because that's what I see a lot with guys that, like, once they put one hand on their stick, their body posture and their like effort level goes down. Then no, you know what I mean?
Here's the thing: is like this is another thing where like this could be a huge debate. Is like I'm a big hand switcher when you're on the inside.
Okay, you're teaching that to your guys?
Yeah, that's what I try to teach.
Okay.
I think we have a lot of work to do in our sliding mechanics and things like that, and as we're playing guys on the inside and our hips and all that good stuff. But one thing that they will learn is I'm a big 2-hand. Like, I want 2 hands on my stick. I want to be able to switch hands. So if I'm switching past the Z line, I can go ahead and get out. But my stick's to the inside. I'm switching hands to do that. I had pretty quick hands when it came to that. We've had guys window wipe, but I never liked that stance, because then you're kind of dragging the rest of your body with you when you are trying to slide, and then you have to get the stick out rather than just switching hands and getting the stick out. I always found it easier, and so I try to teach our guys that concept pretty often. It's going to be something that's going to be driven into our guys here in the near future. So
I want to stay here because I'm a guy who does not teach the switch hands to the inside. And again, I think it just comes from preference. The coaches I've talked to, it's like, well, I didn't do that, or I'm not ambidextrous. Guys that are, Probably teach it. And so, yeah, I was never taught that way. I never did that. So teach me any kind of nuance to this kind of switch to the inside other than your stick needs to be to the inside, right? Like, how do you go about developing a kid and teaching this concept when a lot of guys haven't done it?
We do a lot of sliding drills that switch the Z line. So we have one drill that we call the Hayes drill. I can't remember where I got it from. It might have been Coach O, who's now with Syracuse, the defensive coordinator from Syracuse. I think I saw him do it at I think it might have been in Canada. I want to say it was him, but when he was at Manhattan. I want to say I picked it up off him. But we call this the Hayes drill, and it's a basic drill where two guys are playing the crease. They go out to the ball, or they act like they're going to slide, so they're going to, show but don't go. They get a check call, they come back to the crease, and they push out, they bump out the guy that is replacing them as the two. So then it's now shifting past on the other side of the Z line, and they're able to slide out the backside. So it's basically mimicking, okay, I don't have to go here, but they got the ball to the backside, they're dodging quickly, I need to go. And what I found was that I started getting guys to switch hands there in drills like that, and it became natural to them. And this is throughout my career, not, this is something that we're really going to focus on here. But I think that was when I really started dialing that piece in. And so I got them really good at understanding, like, okay, my butt needs to be to the sideline, then the ball sideline when I'm sliding. So I'm sliding upfield, we're trapping the ball, if that makes sense, right? And getting back, we need to have our stick to the inside. Sometimes it's easier just to snap your hands to the inside because your stick's actually a deterrent. It's not so much that you're going to catch a ball that's being thrown, but the fact that you put that stick up and that attackman has half a second to react, and he's going to look at your stick and go, that's a tight window, maybe I need to move the ball the other way. And so
he doesn't think that guy is not ambidextrous and won't catch that or
Correct.
Won't knock it down. Interesting.
Correct. So you're putting a stick in a lane with not the intention to catch the ball. It's just like goalies. I try to tell them, don't catch the ball, just make the save. And because if you try to catch the ball, you might come up a little short, right? And so it's the same thing, same kind of mindset. It's like, let's put your stick in the lane, and that might deter that attackman from throwing the ball. And if he does, you at least have a shot at maybe knocking that ball down. And
How
so
long does
switching your hands is usually a little bit quicker than turning your whole body all the way around.
It undoubtedly is. If I had all things considered, I would say if a guy can do it, switch hands. It's just for me, it's like I got so many other things to worry about with teaching these guys lacrosse that like making him ambidextrous is like the last thing on my mind. Yeah, I love that.
And then you just rip it out. Like you just rep it out. Like you just continuously do it.
How long does it take?
Eventually they just get good at it.
How does it take a season? Does it take two for like maybe you're dealing with college guys, but
ask me this time next year.
Okay.
If I'm still harping on that, then you know that it hasn't taken yet.
So I do want to touch on this violence and intensity piece. You mentioned that right up front. This is what you kind of want to instill from how your team should play, right? So how do you go about influencing that behavior via the drills or via culture? How are you thinking about being more violent and more intense?
I mean, it's even the things we name, like calls, right? Like we have a meat call, and meat is basically raw meat on the ground, right? Like we need to balls on the ground. We need to start chopping and picking up the ball. And so we really, it even goes back to our verbal commands and how we do things every day in practice. If I'm not bringing that style of intensity, then they're not going to pick up with that stuff, right? So I try to coach with a lot of adrenaline, a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and try to use I've done a lot of violent things in my life, and so I try to use that to help teach these guys. And what I would say is, like, when you lift up the intensity of a practice as a coach, the guys feed off of that. So it's a lot of the drills we do are like, some of my favorite drills are 2v2 ground balls, where the defense gets to try and shoot on the cage, right? A lot of competition. It's a bloody battle. There's not a lot of penalties, but there's a lot of penalties, but guys, like, we're trying to create this really competitive culture, and so when you do that, you unintentionally create a lot of violence, right? And this is a very violent sport. When you watch some of these the best teams in the country play, there's people all over the place, right? Like, there's guys diving for ground balls. There's guys, diving for trail checks. There's guys, sliding with the intent to kill somebody in a sense, right? Like, they really slide. They slide like it's the last slide they'll ever take. And I think what we're trying to really instill in our defense is have guys understand, like, you can't be afraid to get a penalty in Division I. You have to just go. You have to make a full speed mistake, and you have to be intense when you do it. And so we're really trying to develop this mentality of, like, hey, every ball needs to come up us. Or if they pick it up, they're not going to have fun picking that ball up. And so we're trying to develop that right now. And we do that through a lot of different ways. Like I said, the verbal commands, drills are a massive way to do it. But honestly, how we interact with the guys. On our side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, I have a lot of guys that are really tough dudes. And so I really try to tap into that as much as possible. Every drill we do, we're going to do with a lot of intensity. We're going to do it with a lot of reps. You're not going to complain. You're not going to, we're going to do all the dirty drills, all the drills that the defensemen hate, right? And we're going to do it as intense as possible. And when you do that, you develop a mindset of violence, if you will.
Yeah. I don't want to be that guy here, but it's 2025, right? And you look at the NFL, they barely even tackle in their practices anymore. And so I'm just interested in how you blend this level of, like, hey, we need a ton of violent drills to work this into the culture without guys coming up injured every other day because we're running maybe too many of these. So how do you think about balance when you talk about having, more uneven stuff where guys aren't getting touched as much as opposed to 2v2 chaos ground balls?
Right. We call it Thunderdome.
Yeah.
You develop a mindset of like, this is gonna be tough, right? Like, let's be honest, this job is not gonna be easy. What we're trying to do is not gonna be easy, right? And you have to buy all in. You have to be willing to sacrifice for that. Every coach on the staff has sacrificed. Every player is going to have to sacrifice. Our AT is going to have to sacrifice, right? Like, if we want this thing to move forward, we're going to have to sacrifice. And so guys are now buying into getting banged up a little bit, which I don't know if that's happened in the past. I can't speak for what's happened in the past, but we're trying to create this gritty culture of, like, hey, we're blue collar as hell, and we're gonna do our best to outwork you, and we're gonna try and dictate. And if you beat us after we tried to dictate the pace of the game or how the game is played, and you beat us, then hey, hopefully you walk off the field and you go, man, we really had to earn that one. And I think what we found is, as we've ramped that up, at first there's a little bit of, okay, these guys are a little crazy. These Coach Burke's running all over the field, and he's, bringing this crazy intensity, and then all of a sudden they're like, it's not stopping, so we need to buy into this. And, I'm very thankful to have guys on our team that are buying into that type of culture. And then when you look at the future, you recruit guys that have that, which I think is a whole nother discussion is, as a recruiting coordinator, how we recruit has been very interesting, but we try to scare guys away in the recruiting process. The way we're going to change this thing is with culture and grit and hard work. And if that's not for you, then this is probably just not going to fit. And that's perfectly fine. If you're not willing to face this adversity that we have, this is just not going to be the program for you. And so we've really kind of coached with that same mentality, and our players have really bought into that mentality. And like I said, there was a little bit of pushback because they're still learning, right? And we are still learning as coaches. but they're still okay. This is vastly different than what we're used to, and so there's a little bit of like, oh wow, this is okay. This is what we signed up to do. This is why we came to Hampton, and now we're getting that buy-in, which I think is pretty awesome. And it's a kudos to the guys, because we're not, like I said, I'm not an easy coach to play for, and so for our guys to go out and work as hard as they do, and I got to give them a shout out.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, I appreciate them putting in the work too. And I know a lot of that stuff when you have a coaching change, and some of them, it might be their second coaching change. Maybe not. It was in like 2020. But I know there's a ton of guys that are watching the program. I saw the alumni photos from 2 weekends ago, the alumni weekend. Yeah, it's amazing, man. And to see those faces that I, spend time on the field with. We were trying to grow this as well. We want to see this be successful. So big shout out to all the guys that are doing that now at Hampton and have really, taken up that responsibility. Chris, we are at the hour mark. Any last piece on this communication side of things when it comes to defense?
Believe it or not, I have our guys communicate a little bit looser. We have our calls, but the way you communicate it can be so different, right? Like nowadays, you're watching like the PLL or these college games, when it comes time to the playoffs and people are mic'd up, right? One thing I learned was that it's easier to just say, "Hey, Zach, you're my two," or "Zach, hey, you're my far here," rather than go far. Who's my far? Who's my near? Like it being a little bit more robotic with it might be detrimental, right? Like so. Having an actual conversation, I think, has been huge for our guys, where it's like, Miles, get down here. You're the far. We've had better results with guys actually just kind of just having a conversation rather than being call sign this, call sign that, call sign, hey, we're this, we're that, we're this, we're that. You here, you there. What we found to be really successful, where we found a lot of success was when our guys actually just communicated and had a good conversation. And so I've actually backtracked where I was like, no, it's 1, 2, fire, this, that. And if you say anything else, you're wrong. I've kind of backtracked to where we do that, but we do it in a way that every person kind of can communicate, because everybody communicates differently, right? There are going to be some guys that are going to be robotic with their communication, but then there's also going to be some guys like, hey, I got your two, dude, we're good. And that should be perfectly fine. As long as he's using our verbiage, I'm cool with it, because like those are that's what you're going to pick up when you're in those situations, is like if we're using 1 and 2, right? Me coming down as a 2, Zach, I'm your 2, you're good to go. That is perfectly fine. You heard the 2. You're like, okay, I have a 2 here. So I've actually backtracked a little bit, and it allows the guys to communicate a little bit more fluid.
Okay, I love that answer.
Yeah, one major piece, you got to practice it. You have to practice communication. You have to set up drills that only focus on communication. And I say that because it's such a major part of the game. So everything we do has communication in it, but then we have specific drills for our defense where we'll do different scenarios where they're communicating through it as the ball is moving. And you don't even need the offense for it. Like, we set up cones or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I will tell you that, like, we have drills that really focus on that. And I actually learned that from Coach Jorgensen and Coach Peter Sessa, who's now at 3D New England. A little shout out for him.
Well, maybe we can get some of those drills into the end of the episode here in that favorite drill concept. I would love to get maybe video of that, because, having drills that are just focused on communication, take away the rest of it, I think is a good idea. So
it's a major part. So
awesome, man. Hey, this has been a great discussion. As always, when I get on with someone and we get to chatting about lacrosse, it feels like we could do it for another hour. So unfortunately, we got to stop it, but I appreciate you, man. Any last thoughts or kind of words? I know you gave a great shout out to the Wabash guys, and they did a great job, but now you're at Hampton, and I'm super excited to see you have success with Coach Culpepper and the crew. Any last kind of words on Hampton or what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how and we don't know when, but this thing's going to turn around as long as we keep working hard, and I think that's a life lesson for all the guys out there. Just keep putting your head down and keep working, and you end up in places that you didn't expect. I'll be one of the first guys to tell you, I never thought I was going to be a Division I coach. And here I am helping try and turn around a very polarizing program. And I'm so blessed for everything that got me here. But every day I worked really hard to get here, and the hard work just goes such a long way. And you don't know when it's going to happen, you don't know how, but you will get there. And so, for the Hampton guys, I think we definitely have bought into that mentality. But that just goes for just people in general. So.
All right. Well, I'm really excited to have you as part of the program. They got a good one. So I appreciate you very much, Coach Burke. We'll have to have you on again soon, but this has been a great combo.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, man.